Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us again on another episode of Who Needs Shoes. And I'm your host, Tanya Manning-Yarde. And today, my guest, I am so honored. My guest today has spent over 20 years navigating the high-stakes, precision-driven world of banking. But in 2012, Nadine stepped away from that career to solve a larger problem. What started as a mother's search for resources in an underserved community has evolved into a movement that has redefined the landscape of Newark, New Jersey, and beyond. Nadine is the founder of Nassan's Place, but that title only tells half the story. She is a visionary for whom her hometown of the city of Newark trusted enough to gift land and a building for a state-of-the-art sensory center and affordable housing complex to be built. She is the leader the New York Giants have recently named as their 2025 Inspire Change Changemaker, and a voice that has commanded the attention of everyone from the New Jersey State Budget Committee to national stages like the Jennifer Hudson Show. In September of 2024, she stood on the stage in Los Angeles to accept the Karen E. Smith Angel on the Path Award from the Holly Rod Foundation, a moment that underscored her role as a guiding light for families across the country. But if you look at what she's built, from sensory-friendly movie nights to city and nationwide advocacy, it's clear she isn't just an angel, she's an architect. She has proven that a zip code should never determine a child's potential. Please welcome the relentless, the strategic, and the deeply soulful Nadine Wright-Abubakrr. Nadine, welcome to the show.
Wow. First, that was a great introduction. Wow. Oh, thank you for that, my sister. Thank you for having me. I'm so appreciative to have this opportunity for us to finally have a conversation, right? Two
Yes.
autism moms on this journey. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, Nadine, just thank you. Thank you for just being the sister and friend I didn't know how to ask for and yet was still granted. And I am deeply appreciative that with everything you're doing, you have made time to be here and us to have this conversation. So I want to start with this question for you. For those that are meeting you for the first time, your journey with autism started when your son Naysan was just 26 months old. You went through the initial suspecting, the seeking of information, and eventually the diagnosis. And when you look back at that specific window of time, what was the biggest thing you had to unlearn about what you thought your life and your motherhood were going to look like?
Wow. Well, when I found out that I was pregnant, I was overjoyed. Me and my husband had been married less than 3 months before I found out I was expecting my fourth child.
Mhm.
After having 3 girls, I was so excited to know and find out that I was finally going to have my boy, right? I was finally going to be that basketball mom, that football mom. I was so looking forward to all of those dreams that I didn't get to have with my daughters because they really weren't that interested in sports, just one of them. But, um, I was happy, like during that time, the pregnancy, him being born, and then looking forward to what the future was going to hold for my boy child. I was
Mhm.
excited. And then this thing called autism happened. And it was so strange. I'll never forget the day that I realized something was wrong.
Mhm.
I remember calling out his name and he didn't respond. And I said, Naysan, which was odd because he always responded. I would tell
Mhm.
Naysan to lay down in his crib and take his bottle. He always responded to everything that I said. Mama, dad. He was saying all of that. And this particular day, I called his name and he didn't respond. It's like, Naysan, Naysan. So I'm thinking, oh my God, maybe my baby's deaf. But then in
Mhm.
the midst of this, the Elmo commercial comes on. Elmo commercial comes on and he runs to the television. He heard it. So I was like, how did he hear that? And he didn't hear me call him. So
Mhm.
I called him out again, nothing. And so I tape recorded the Elmo commercial or the Elmo thing that came on. I laid him on the bed And I called out his name, nothing. Then I put the commercial on and he jumps up. And I was like, what is this? Right? And there were little things that I saw too, because he started flapping his hands and he
Mhm.
started running back and forth. It's like, what is this?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
As a mother, you like, something's different. I remember
Mhm.
going to the doctor and saying, Doc, something's off. You know, he's not using words, he's saying sounds, he's flapping his hands, he's starting to make these loud sounds,
Mhm.
right? He's hitting people out of nowhere. It was a lot. And the doctor was like, well, boys are different than girls, because
Mhm.
I had 3 girls prior.
Mhm.
They develop differently. So, okay. Something wasn't off. In your gut as a mother, when there's
Yes.
something off. And, but you go to your pediatrician and you think, okay, they know better. It's my first boy. I don't know. My gut kept saying, Nadine, something's off. So at that time, he was being babysat at someone's home. And I asked her, I said, do you see a change in him? It's like something's different. And she's like, oh, no, because she had other kids. And no, but I did. And, honestly, I Googled it. I did, like, hand flapping, loud
Mhm.
sounds, right? Not hearing, and his eye contact was off. So I noticed a lot of these things. I Googled it. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I saw the word autism, right? But I'm gonna tell you my ignorance. This doesn't happen in Black children, right? That was my ignorance. Like, no, this can't be autism. No, not my kid. So I put him in a daycare setting. I will never forget. I remember the first day I took him. Um, The woman said to me when I picked him up, she said they noticed that he was off by himself. He put everything in his mouth, so you had to watch him constantly. There were so
Mhm.
many signs that I did not know. And when she approached me, she was very hesitant. And I was like, you see it too? And she said,
Mhm.
well, I think maybe you should get him evaluated. And I was like ecstatic. I was like, yes, I'm not crazy. And she's looking
Mhm.
at me like I'm crazy. And I was like, what's the problem? She said, normally when I approach a parent and I say that I see something and maybe they get very defensive. She said, you're one of the first parents that seem happy that, you know, I saw something and I'm
Mhm.
saying it. And then that's when an early intervention started. So at that moment, going through all this process, getting a developmental pediatrician involved and all of that, and hearing the words that he has something called PDD, NOS. Back then, and this was in 2006, it was called persuasive developmental delay, not otherwise specified. So they didn't claim it as autism at that time because he was only 2. So
Mhm.
the window was between the ages of, I guess, being born to 5, your
Mhm.
development could always develop. So they didn't want to classify him as autism. But unfortunately for us, the behaviors didn't get better.
Mhm.
We went into everything we could, OT, speech. I was going to all these sessions, and it would take us literally the whole session to get him to calm down from some of the behaviors that he was having, from the
Mhm.
toe walking. You name it, I went through it with him, and it was very overwhelming. Um, and then when he got to close to 5 years old, the diagnosis of autism had to come, right? And then, I had to figure this out. But in the midst of all of this, I'm trying to find a support group because I'm overwhelmed, right? No
Mhm.
one in my family knew about this. No one was talking about it, right? What is this? Why, what's happening? And, there's days where I would just break down and cry. A lot of times I felt like I did something wrong. Like maybe I should have done something differently. Maybe I was too old. I was almost 40 when I had him. You know, it was so many things going through my mind. And, I'm questioning God, like, God, why? Why my last child? Why my only son? You know, I went through this whole thing of being depressed to being, um, what am I going to do, to just shutting down. And one day, I said to God, why? Why is I'm going through this? Why is my son like, God said to me in my head, I gave my only begotten son for you, right? In that moment, I didn't understand what was happening in my head, right? But what I didn't know at that time, that I was about to live in my purpose, right?
Mm.
Sometimes we
Mhm.
don't realize what God has for us. And as you mentioned earlier in the intro, I was in the banking industry almost 20 years. That was going to be my retirement job. I was at a
Mhm.
job making six figures. I was happy, We had just gotten a house for the kids. We were happy, living life, trying to do what we can so my children can have a better life than I did. And then this
Mhm.
thing happens, and it affected everyone within our household. But more importantly, me. I had to snap out of it. I had to stop feeling sorry for myself. I had to say, Nadine, you doing this is not going to help him. Find out what you need to do to help your son. And what I needed to do was to find out what type of resources were available. Were there support groups? I needed respite. I was overwhelmed. He was not sleeping at night. He was still in diapers up until 9. It was so many things going on in our world at that time. But one of the things that I knew is that I needed to talk to someone. And when I started making phone calls to try to get supports and services, I got bounced from one phone call to another,
Mhm.
and to another. And it was like, oh my God, it was overwhelming. I would break down and cry after I got off the phone because they told me
Mhm.
to call this place to tell me to call that place. And in my mind, I'm like, why don't we have anything here in our community? I was born and raised in the city of Newark, right?
Mhm.
Currently, I live in East Orange. I've been a resident of East Orange for over 20 plus years. I even went to high school here. But Newark
Mhm.
was my first home and will always be my home. But I couldn't find anything. And there was no one in this community talking about this thing called autism. And as I pondered through life, dealing with the OTs, the ABAs, the school systems, trying to get everything navigated through, learning more about this thing called autism, it got me thinking, why don't we have programs and services within our own communities? Why aren't
Mhm.
there support
Mhm.
groups here? Right? Because I
Yeah.
found them. They just weren't here. They were more in the suburban communities. Newark, East Orange, surrounding areas of Essex County, urban.
Mhm.
Like, why don't we have the I thought I was the only one going through this, right? And unfortunately, I found out that there were tens of hundreds of thousands of us going through this thing called autism. But no one was doing anything within urban inner cities of Newark, East Orange, or surrounding areas.
Mhm.
And it took me 6 years after the diagnosis to finally say, I'm going to do this because I pondered, what can I do to no longer be a part of a solution, to
Mhm.
become a part of a solution to a
Mhm.
problem that was plaguing our community and dealing with this thing called autism? Because as prior to Nassan's diagnosis, I was ignorant too. If I saw a kid acting out, falling out, we were raised, oh, that kid just needs a good old fashioned, what, pop, pop, pop.
Mhm.
Not
Mhm.
realizing that this thing was so much bigger than anyone ever knew or even talked about. The numbers were staggering. As a mom, I jumped into action once I got over that pity thing. And God
Right.
said, now you got to go to work, right? You now got to go to work. Now you're going to live what I got you here for. And this
Mhm.
isn't your purpose. And in order for you to live this purpose, we had to use your son. And that's how I had to look at it. And that's what I had to accept, right? That God used my son just like he gave his son for us, right? Hard as it was for me to accept and deal with it, my faith in God was even stronger. And he's
Mm.
guided me through this um unknown territory, and it hasn't been easy. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that my life has been rosy, it's been easy. I mean, there's nights where, back then we weren't sleeping for almost a year. I refused to put him on medication because of ignorance, right? And what I had to learn is that what we want for our children and what they need is not always the same. They're two different things. So it definitely changed the trajectory of everything I thought I was going to have. And it's like mourning the loss of a child, actually. It really truly is. All my hopes and dreams um, in a moment were dashed, even though I didn't realize then that things could get better and that he could one day do certain things I never thought he would do.
Mhm.
But it was definitely life changing, but it didn't mean I didn't stop living. It just meant I lived differently. And here we are, 6 years
Mhm.
after I made the decision to start a nonprofit called Nassan's Place, which is inspired by him. I never wanted a parent to feel the way that I felt when I got that diagnosis. I didn't want a parent to not figure out, where do I go from here? Because when they give you that diagnosis, they don't give you a plan, right? They don't say step one, step two, because you're still grieving. You're still trying to accept everything that's been told to you. And, once I started doing my research and hearing stories, one of my biggest inspirations through this process was Holly Robinson Pete. And I'm going to tell you why. She was the only African American woman that I saw out
Mhm.
there on a national platform talking about this thing called autism. And by her talking about it, it gave me inspiration to want to do more within my own community. I didn't have the platform that she had, and she didn't
Mhm.
even have to use her platform, but she chose to. And I
That's true.
don't know if she knew in that moment when she was doing all that she was doing, because she's a mother just like all of us, right?
Mhm.
But I think what she did is she inspired hundreds and thousands of us, probably millions, throughout not just the country, but throughout the world by sharing her story and making it okay for us to talk about it. In Black and brown communities, there was a stigma, so no one was talking about it. And, she became someone that I looked up to, that I wanted to emulate within my own community, right?
Mhm.
I wasn't on that national level. I didn't want to be on that national level. I wanted to be in that community doing the work, helping these families navigate, finding out support groups, finding programs and services, right? It was so frustrating for me to be told, call this number and they can tell you where to go, or call that
Mhm.
number and they can tell you what program you can get in. Call this number to find out they never existed. It has been a journey, but getting that diagnosis was a game changer for me. Didn't know where it was going to lead to, but I had to trust in God and follow what He said I needed to do. And here we are.
Wow. Nadine, I have like a whole list of questions that you just went through, so I'm gonna go to page 2 now. But you know, I just really I really admire your bravery, your embracing of your heartbrokenness, but also using that as a vehicle to be an agent of change and to not be stuck in what feels impossible, but to venture into figuring out what can be possible. Um, and I just want to say thank you for sharing your journey, its ups and downs, and how you're still trying to figure things out even now. Just thank you, Nadine. Thank you. I want to ask you about what that experience was like for you when you were trying to find services and they weren't in close proximity or within immediate access to you. In those early days of the unknown, so to speak, what was the one specific resource or support you desperately needed that simply wasn't there? And the absence of which eventually became the blueprint for what Nassan's place provides today.
Wow. That first thing was support, someone to talk to,
Mhm.
someone to tell me how to navigate this or to understand or even process it. You know, having another mother that I could speak to, um, that was going through it, within my own community. Because as I said, I did find something, and I wanted a mental break. It was overwhelming,
Mhm.
at the time. And let me just rewind a little bit. At the
Sure.
time I got the diagnosis, I was working in the banking industry. I was working 16-hour work days. I was a manager at Citibank. I was working 16-hour days, right? My children were home. My husband was home helping with, Naysan. Me, not being there, I had to now change my career path. And at that time, the only thing I could think about in terms of a job was to teach, right? Because teaching would now give me an opportunity to learn more about this thing called autism. Because if
Mhm.
he had it, had to be other children, and I did find that out, of course, later. But in order to teach, I had to have a college degree. And when I went into the banking industry at 18 years old, I didn't need a degree. I went straight in and I worked myself up into a managerial role working at different financial institutions. So at the point that I knew that I had to leave this 16-hour a day job and find something that was going to give me the hours and days that I needed, teaching was it. So at the ripe old age of 40, I
Mhm.
decided to go to college and get my bachelor's degree in business management and marketing. And that degree was going to help me get into the teaching realm, right? So once I got my degree, I graduated. Um, I left my job at Citibank and they were going through some layoffs. And thank God I was one of the people involved in the layoff. So now it was an opportunity for me to now go into the next chapter of my life. And I became a substitute teacher first. And once I got into the school system, this myth that I had about the school system was totally different than what I saw, right?
Mhm.
In my mind, school systems, are there to make sure our children are taken care of. And in most cases it is. But what I ran into was in certain communities, especially those in urban inner cities and of color, there were some things that should have been done a lot differently in my eyes. It opened me up to so much more. Um, it opened me up to the opportunity that maybe teaching wasn't something that I needed to do. Even though I delved into it for almost 9 years, I was a substitute teacher, and then I was a teacher's assistant in special education. I got a glimpse of something that changed me. Right? It
Can you
changed
talk
me to
about
the
that?
point where I did not want to be in a classroom anymore. It
Mhm.
it it even fueled me more to wanna do something outside of the classroom, and that's to advocate for our children. Um,
Mm.
I will say this, through my educational journey with Naysan, I didn't have any real issues. I did my homework. I knew what my rights were. I knew what
Mhm.
my son needed. I knew what I expected the district to provide for him. And in all honesty, they did do everything I needed them to do for my child because he needed it. But what I saw from the inside, some things should have been done differently so that these children could have reached their full potential. So that drove me more to want to leave the classroom and to run a nonprofit. And didn't realize that nonprofit was something I would ever do, but did
Mhm.
realize that advocacy would be something that I wanted because truth be told, when I started Nassan's Place, I was just looking for support group, right? And respite for parents like myself. I had
Mhm.
no idea the bigger animal that I was about to engage in, all these different pieces to the puzzle, as they say, that was
Mhm.
needed for our families, especially in communities that were in inner cities, right? Underserved. We know who were there, black and brown children. They weren't
Mhm.
getting the same types of resources that other communities were getting. And it was a lot of factors into that, right? Most of the families that Nason's Place wind up serving are single parent households, right? So
Mhm.
there was so many things that I wanted and I saw. Like first was the support group, right? We needed that. We needed someone to know that we weren't alone, right? Then the respite because it's overwhelming. When you have this kid all day that's flying back and forth and hitting and doing it's enough to make you go a little boom 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 boom. So you
Mhm.
needed a mental break from that, right? And then when it got to programs, like after school programs,
Mhm.
find them. Couldn't find a summer camp for our children. Like, why don't we have these things in our community? Right. And it was so interesting because as I go through all of this, and I know I'm a little off, Tanya, but once I start talking, that's it. Um,
Form, absolutely. Nadine, you have a story to tell, and regardless of my questions, it's more important that you tell the story that you need our listeners to hear. So don't worry about this list of questions at
well,
all.
the one thing I say, and I say it all the time. Zip code should never be a reason any of our children and families go without needed services. And, as I started deving in, I'll never forget, as I started Nassan's Place, one thing I realized I had to do before I did anything else is I had to educate a community along the way because people
Mhm.
were ignorant of it. Ignorance is just not knowing. And as a mother, when I would take Nassan out and he would fall out and hit and whatever, and people are staring at me, I would give them that look like, yeah, what? Right?
Mhm.
That's my kid. Now
Mhm.
what? But that was ignorance on my part because that person didn't know what my child was going through, just like I used to be that ignorant person. So I had to realize that I needed to educate people. So when he did do things that were out of the ordinary, and he did, like one day
Mhm.
we're walking in the mall and the little girl had an ice cream cone and he just walks up and snatches it out because these kids are very impulsive. And it's not a one size fit all. All of our kids have different characteristics, right? Um,
Mhm.
but to have to explain that to someone in horror, like, oh, I'm so sorry, my kid hit your kid, my kid snatched something from your kid. They didn't mean it. A lot of parents were accepting of it once I explained it. And then some people were just like, no, your kitchen hit my. Then I would go into my mother mode, right? But at the end of the day, right? what I learned is that I needed to educate my community. And I would go out to any table setup I could, any information place I could be, and set up a table and start talking about autism, talking about the impact to our children within our community, the need for resources and services. And literally, I started Naysan's Place in my living room. It was a thought. It took 6 years of a
Mhm.
lot of questioning myself, doubting myself, a lot of affirmation from God that I had to do this and live in my purpose. Um, Started this organization by just doing a wine tasting in my living room, my dining room area, because we needed to raise money for the 501c3. So this was literally started from the ground up. It was started because of a mother's um, concern to have more resources and supports within her own community, but more
Mhm.
importantly, for a mother to help others who were dealing with this thing called autism and didn't know where to go. And I started getting out in the community. I started asking questions. Doors started opening. Like once I started educating people. And one thing I learned, though, one thing I learned is that I had to show that I was sustainable. I
Mm.
had to show that I was sustainable because I'm sure there were other Nadines out there who wanted to do the same thing, who had the same questions I had, because there were children before Naysan that was diagnosed who are now adults. And I'm sure those parents had those same questions and those same thoughts, and they tried to do whatever I was trying to do. And I was determined not to give up because God wouldn't allow me. Because trust me, there was days where I said, God, I can't do this. You know,
Yes.
I would hold an event and no one would show, one person would show up or two people would show up, right? Because people were still not talking about it.
Mhm.
But then I started going out to more events in the community. And I started asking, why don't we have programs geared towards children with different abilities, right? If we have summer camps for atypical, why don't we have summer camps for children on the spectrum? Because they require so much more. One thing
Yeah.
I've learned through this journey to provide programs and services for our children costs money, right? Because you now need professionals
Mhm.
who are trained on this. And a lot of
Right.
people don't want to spend that money, but our children are worth that money. If we live in any municipality, we're paying taxes for our homes, we're paying rent. We deserve to get the same types of programs. But what I learned is a lot of our municipalities didn't know what was happening within our community. So how do
Mhm.
we expect them to help us if they don't know? So I started going out there and getting them to know.
Yes, you
East
did.
Orange was the first municipality in the state of New Jersey, from my understanding, to offer a autism swim program in Essex County. They even got an award that year. And one of the reasons they did that is because we advocated for it. Me and a
Mhm.
bunch of parents were sitting in a meeting one day because I would go wherever I can get space donated to us to host our support meetings because we did get that. Everything that I wanted, that I prayed for, God made sure it happened. And I remember sitting in the meeting and when the recreation director came out and, they allowed us to use space to do the band. He's like, well, what do you guys want? And I remember one parent said, we need swim programs for our children. A lot of people don't know that one of the top causes of death for our children on the spectrum is by drowning. A lot of
Right.
our children, for whatever reason, is drawn to water. So East Orange, New Jersey was the first municipality, from what I understand, in the state of New Jersey to offer an autism swim program, which they got
Mhm.
an award for that year. That opened the door for them to now make my dream come true and offer a summer camp, which they hired me to run, right?
How
At that
about that?
time, I wasn't ready to do it on my own. They
Mhm.
hired me to run their program. I ran their summer camp for 2 years. And I'm so appreciative for those doors being open because now it allowed me the opportunity to go into other municipalities. And what better municipality but the city of Newark, where I was born and raised, the largest municipality in the state of New Jersey.
Mhm.
I started doing the work. I started, meeting with people, the councilman. I mean, Mildred Crump. Oh my God.
Mhm.
If I had, and you see, I light up. Mildred Crump was one of the Newark Council President Mildred Crump was one of the very first people that I reached out to when I wanted to start Nassan's Place. And she opened me with open arms. I call her my Mildred. Mildred was with me from day one. She made sure the doors got open in the city of Newark for us. And through that door, councilman, council opened the door so that now we can offer a swim program in Newark, right? Newark
Right.
followed the lead. They offered a swim program. Newark followed the lead. They offered a summer camp that I did not work for them to do it. I partnered with them to do it. And we've
Mhm.
been working with Newark. We're getting ready to go into our 5th year of offering a full day summer camp for children on the autism spectrum. Full day, which is something that was not happening within our community. When these
Mhm.
children get a summer program, extended school year, they generally get a half a day unless they're out
Mhm.
of the district. But, Newark opened up the door wide open and said, you know what, Nadine, here's what we're going to do. Because we want our constituents, just like East Orange, to have the same resources, right? And if their children have different abilities, it doesn't mean they don't get the services. So Newark has partnered with us going into our 5th year in 2026. We'll be offering a full day summer camp for children on the autism spectrum. And what I love, love, love about our camp is that our children get to go out in the community. They get to go on trips. They go swimming. They get to do the same thing as any other camp does, right? And not limited, because our children shouldn't be limited because of their abilities. And, doing this work over the years, the city of Newark, saw the work, the impact. The mayor of Newark, Ross J. Baraka, grateful beyond measures. I remember having a conversation with him a few years into Nassan's place, and he said, well, what do you want? Because at that point, we didn't have our own place.
I
We
was just
still
about to
on
ask you.
our way. And I
Mhm.
remember him saying to me at one of the walks that we held in Newark, because we would do an autism walk every year. What is the one thing you need? I said, we don't have a home of our own. We've been fortunate enough to have community partners throughout Essex County give us space or donate space. But as your mother always says, nothing like having your own.
That's
And,
right.
after we had that conversation, he spoke at our walk, not realizing that he was going to make this speech. But he says, Nadine doesn't know this, but she said they need a home of their own. And Newark is going to make sure she has a home for her organization. And I remember saying to him, you do know that we don't just service children in Newark, we service children no matter what their zip codes. He said, I got you, and that's okay. And I'll never forget that day. I will forever be grateful to this man. And I remember him saying that he understood about autism because he used to be a principal at Central High and he saw these children.
Mhm.
And he was very appreciative of the work that I was doing and how I was learning to educate others within the community. So much so that now we're on our journey to build a state of the art autism center in the city of Newark, along with a housing component. Um, and I'm super, super excited. The process has taken a little longer than we anticipated because this land was gifted to us at the end of 2019, which
Mhm.
we all know COVID happened and it shut us down. So now we're back into working with a developer now to get this done. But I will tell you, more is needed. We need funding, right? Because this center will be one of the first of its kind that will service children from 21 and below, right?
Mhm.
I will say that I do have another amazing shero along this journey in the city of Newark that services the 21 and up population, and that's Michelle Adebato through the Center for Autism.
Mhm.
Her and I will often joke, you got the 21 and up, and I'm going to handle the 21 and below. But she's doing a phenomenal job in providing those services for the 21 and up population. But no one was filling that void for 21 and below. And that's where Nassan's place is filling that void. And this center, not only is this center going to be a place where we will host all of our program, um, summer camps, after school programs, when school's not in, we're going to have advocacy because social services is so important. People don't realize I'm dealing with families who are dealing with homelessness, food insecurities, and mental wellness. Mental wellness is a whole nother animal, right? And these
Mhm.
are things that I never even thought about that, Nassan's place would be dealing with. But it's part of the process for us. But, having this housing component attached to this center, because truth be told, I just wanted to build a two-story center that would house our programs. And then some
Mhm.
people started talking, well, Nadine, that's a mixed use area. You can now do some housing there. And to make it affordable and to have a percentage of it go to families of children with autism,
Mhm.
it was a no-brainer. So now we're on this journey. We have some hiccups along the way. I'm praying that this year we will break ground in the first quarter, and then the process will be done that we can start this. But I still need the community's help. I still need the community support. Um, But yeah, we're on this journey to make sure that these children, no matter what their zip code, has resources within their own community. We should never have to leave our community to get the services. So a big shout out and thank you to Newark Mayor Raj-J-Baraka, to East Orange Mayor Ted Eric Green, who's actually one of our original board members. And, at that time that we
Mhm.
got this program, it was East Orange Mayor Lester Taylor who
Right.
initiated this. But it would be remiss of me not to also, thank again Mildred Crump, Council President Mildred Crump. She will always be my Mildred. Um, but along this journey, we've gotten support on the state level from the amazing, phenomenal, first ever African American Lieutenant
Mhm.
Governor of the state of New Jersey, Sheila Oliver. She was one of our bigger supporters. One of the things that we weren't getting was any state funding, and she made sure that we got state funding for several years. I remember when she was an assemblywoman and I was out there with my little pamphlet and
Mhm.
sharing information about autism. And I remember, fast forward, seeing her a few years later, and I was still out there somewhere sharing
Mhm.
information. She said, "You still out here?" I said, "I'm still out." She said, "You come see me." She said, "You come see me." I'll never forget the day that I set up the appointment with her and
Mhm.
our chief of staff at that time, Terry Tucker. We were supposed to only meet for an hour. She met with me for 2 hours. She listened to what
Mhm.
was happening, what was going on with autism, and she wanted to make sure that our children and our community got resources and services, and every year she made sure that we got some funding so that we could continue the work that we needed to do, and I will forever be grateful to, our one and only first, Lieutenant Governor, Sheila
Yeah.
Wright-Oliver, and, her support meant a lot. It helped us to continue to stay where we were and to continue to be relevant. And then on that federal level, oh my, I remember when we had our very first sensory friendly skate day at Twin City. I mean, not Twin City, at Branch Brook. See, I'm dating myself because Twin
It's
City is
okay.
when I was back in the 70s and 80s, right? Um, Branch Brook, kids were doing sensory friendly, were doing skating. They were doing movie days. Like, why can't I kids? So I created things that I didn't have. And one of them was a skate day. And I remember this was in 2013, a year after we started. I put the information out. I shared it as much as I could, where I could. And at that time, he was a councilman, Donald
Mm.
Crump, Donald
Pain.
Payne Jr.
Mhm.
Donald Payne Jr. came out to that event. He was the only politician that particular day that came out, and I'll never forget being so excited because I had someone come out, and this is
Mhm.
early on, this is before the mayor got involved and all of that, and he came out. Fast forward a few years later, he saw me still out here doing the work, and I, remember telling him, what we were doing. The city of Newark gifted us this land. We need money to build, and he
Mhm.
secured back in 2022. It was our 10-year anniversary. He secured a $750,000 grant towards the building for us. He did.
Incredible.
And he was one of our biggest advocates as well and supporters. I remember, I think it was 2 weeks before he died. He called me to his office. "Nadine, I have something for you." So me and my husband went to his office and we sat with him, we talked with him. He asked me, how the organization was going, and just telling him and sharing, all the great things and talking about this building and appreciating him for getting us this grant. And he said, "I have something for you." And he presented me a box full of beautiful handmade bow ties and ties with
Mhm.
autism puzzle pieces on it. And he said, "This is for you to do whatever you would like." They were custom made to, give to dads, to do a fundraiser. Um, just truly humbled by that, right? He took the time to recognize the work that we were doing, but also continue to give back and give us these beautiful ties. And then I got the call maybe a week or so later that he was in the hospital.
Mhm.
And I got to tell you, I'm so grateful for that time that we were able to spend with him prior to his death. What a amazing man. Like, these three great giants from the city level, which was Mildred Crump that we lost,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional.
It's okay. Take a moment because these are people that help to bring your dream to fruition.
Lieutenant Governor Sheila Y. Oliver on the state level,
Mhm.
and on the federal level, Donald Payne Jr. All three of these amazing human beings had a connection to Newark, East Orange, Irving, Essex County. And they made sure that our children with different abilities got access to things that we hadn't had access to before. And I will forever be grateful to these three. I call them earthly angels, and now they're heavenly angels who I know are still watching out over us. And thank, thank
It's
you
okay.
to those three individuals who are now in heaven, and to all the amazing people who have helped us along this way. I think about Frank Gonzalez as I sit here. I remember reaching out to him to do a movie day. I saw that they were doing sensory-friendly movie days in the suburban communities. Why can't
Mhm.
we do it here? And I'll never forget calling him. He had just gotten to his position, and he was like, "What's a sensory-friendly movie day?" And I educated him on what it was. And can I tell you, we're getting ready to go into our 13th year of providing monthly, every single month our families get to go into the Cityplex Theater in Newark, New Jersey, and enjoy a movie day without any stares, looks, judgments. And I remember one day a woman came up to me and she
Mhm.
said, "Thank you for giving me my life back." And I looked at her and like puzzled, like, what do you, what does that mean? And she explained to me a few years earlier, she had brought her son to a movie and
Mhm.
he went through what some of our children go through with meltdowns and how she was treated at the movies and how people, just went at her. And she vowed
Yep.
never to bring him back. And she said, "Because of you, I can now come back to the movies with my
Okay.
son. And I thank you." So, people don't realize some of the stories that these families have to share and who have endured the ignorance. And again, ignorance is a scary thing, but it is life. That these children deserve to thrive within their own community. They deserve to be a part of their community. And it's so important that we get more people to open up their hearts and pocketbooks, because we need that, and wallets, and do more, because these children can thrive if they're just given the right supports. But one thing I learned is, in order to gain acceptance and to give these children hope and opportunities, we had to educate along the way, and that's what
Mm.
Nassan's Place has done. Um, it's
Nadine,
been a
you
labor of love. It truly has. But I gotta say this in this moment, as I
Mhm.
sit here and I talk about the earthly angels and now the heavenly angels that we have, I have to talk about my mom.
Go ahead. Take a moment.
My mother is the reason I am who I am, right? I would watch this woman take food out of a refrigerator and give to others. I would watch her open the doors so other people can eat who didn't have food. I would watch her make patties on the floor for family members who didn't have a place to lay their heads for whatever reason. My heart and everything that I do is because of my mom. And I lost her earlier this year. But I know my daughter say this, "Mom, in these last few months, your life has took this drastic change with all these amazing things happening for you and for us in Nassan's Place. It's because my mom is in heaven and angels are watching over us. But I am the woman I am because of this woman called Virginia Bell Harris Wright. She showed me what love was unconditionally. She showed me the importance of helping others, even if it meant giving up your last. I saw my mom do that. And people often say, "Nadine, you would probably give up your last to help another." And what people don't know is that I was raised by a very strong Black woman who raised 5 children, um, and instilled a lot in us. And one of the things that I got from her was her humility,
Mm.
her desire to help others and not expect anything in return, but just pure goodness. And everything that I do is because of her, and everything that I am is because of her. Um, yeah, sorry.
No, Nadine, it's okay.
I miss
You
her, but I know I got another angel in heaven watching over me. So, yeah.
Nadine, this actually segues into something that I wanted to talk with you about in terms of family, because you've given us as listeners the walkthrough of the incredible work and the impact of the work that you're doing on the community. But also, when we were talking before we started, you were talking about family and talking about your daughters. And I want to even bring, like this part of our conversation to talking about your family and relationships and how that's also helped you to do the work that you do. So, kind of like a quick preface, like, in many families where the child is on the spectrum, siblings can become something known as like glass children, invisible because the focus is always so heavy on the brother or the sister in need. So, how did you and your husband purposely shatter that kind of glass metaphor, if you will, to make sure that your daughters also felt like protagonists in their own lives?
First and foremost, I got to tell you, God blessed me with some amazing daughters.
Hmm.
Um, it- a lot of sacrifices had to be made, right? One of the things I will say is my daughters were so helpful with my son, so much so that I saw that they were taking a lot of them, right? Because autism just doesn't affect the child with autism, it affects every other sibling in that household too. And I want to
Hmm.
point this out. One of the things that's so important to me um, through Nassan's place is to make sure we include siblings. So all of our programming, all of our events, anything that we do is inclusive and it includes the siblings because what we don't realize is that they're impacted as well. And to leave them out is making the situation even worse. So whatever we do through Nassan's place, whether it's our after school programs, our summer camps, it's a little trying because that's our hot commodity for our kids. But any
Hmm.
programs, any events, backpack, holiday celebrations, movie days, anything like that. Even we do overnight respite, weekend respite, right? Once a year, we take the kids away. It's
Hmm.
inclusive because these children need to be a part of what their siblings are doing. Plus, it gives them the opportunity to connect with other siblings, right? Who are living
Yes.
the same way that they do. So we
Yes.
recognize the whole family dynamics, and I'll talk a little bit more about the importance of mental wellness for our parents, because if we don't help them deal with that or some way, then how can they deal with their children? We talk about that a lot. But for
Hmm.
me, I remember when my daughter Naya, my second oldest, was in the eighth grade. They were doing a lot between her and my other daughter. Just so you know, to put it in some context, I have a 36-year-old now, a 31-year-old, a 23-year-old, and a 21-year-old. So there's some age gap differences. And Naya took on a lot. Dominique was on her way into being out of the house pretty much, an adult. And one of the things I saw was Naya and Hassana, my two younger daughters, taking on a lot of the role of helping me with Naysan. I didn't want that to be their lives. So I remember Naya coming to me one day and said, Mom, I'm interested in boarding school, right? And I'm looking at her like, boarding school, what is that? Like, you can't leave, right? But then something hit me because she did this whole presentation on why the pros and cons of boarding school was good. And one of the things that I realized in that moment is she needed to leave home. She needed to leave home. But during that time, Nasan hadn't gotten as worse as he was getting.
Hmm.
You know, we made the decision that, okay, boarding school is what you want. We're going to make this happen, right? You're going to go. And then when she did get in, I remember her saying to me, Mom, I see Nasan's a lot right now, and I won't go. I'm going to stay back and help you.
Mm.
And I looked at my daughter and I said,
Mm.
thank you, but no thank you. He is not your responsibility. He is mine. I want you to go and live your best possible life and enjoy this opportunity that God has now given to you. And she
Mm.
went to a program called A Better Chance. And she went for 4 years. She did amazing things out there. And um, but I remember not wanting her to be here to help me with Nasan because I didn't want to take away her years, right? Because that's what a lot of us do. And I had the luxury of having support within my husband when it came to Naysan. And I remember, Naya and Hassan are 8 years apart. And I remember the time for Hassana to get ready to go to high school. I was determined not to have her in that house because she was the
Mhm.
closest to Naysan at that point. She was the one who saw him more than anybody else because they're 2 years apart.
Mhm.
And she was reluctant to go to boarding school, but it wasn't an option for her because I did not want Naysan to be her responsibility. I did not want to one day hear, you know, I could have did this, but I was helping, but what as a mother, I had to realize that I had to let them live their lives and I didn't want any regrets for that. And I also had the luxury of having a husband um
Mhm.
to help. And, he was very helpful when it came down to helping me with Nasan. Not in the beginning. I think in the beginning, my husband dealt with it differently. I think he was overwhelmed. My husband's a former NFL player.
Mhm.
He's a
Mhm.
former NFL player, and he does. I have a stepson that he didn't get to raise because he lived with his mom in another state. But now he was going to have a son that he was going to raise, and then just like me, everything got pulled from underneath. The son that
Right.
he thought he was going to raise, that he thought that he could now throw a football to, and all of that. All of those dreams became not dreams anymore. It kind of became
Mhm.
something that he didn't think was going to happen. And I'll never forget. I remember is when I finally realized that it impacted him differently. Like certain things I saw, he was in denial. I saw that he didn't want to take Naysan out sometimes. And I saw some things. And I guess it was more because of the stigma, especially in
Mhm.
Black and Brown communities of a man, having a special needs child. No one wants to talk about it. I saw a little bit of that in him. But it wasn't until the moment my stepson played in the NBA, and I remember the NBA Inside Stuff at that time did an interview um, on us. My stepson was in a interview, and he talked about having a brother with autism. And during Autism Awareness Month, they did an interview with us about autism and raising a son. And I remember my husband being in that interview, and for the very first time, I saw the hurt that he was feeling. I
Mm.
felt what he never saw or never told me. I saw it in that moment because he choked up as he was being interviewed and he said something to the effect, you know, it's bittersweet for him to watch one of his sons live his dream and play in the NBA and another son who can't even talk. And he got very emotional, and I saw the tears about to come. And my husband is one of these strong men you
Mhm.
don't see tears from.
Yes.
I saw the
Tall,
hurt in him.
big. Mhm.
I saw the hurt in him for the very first time, and I had a better understanding because we had our moments where I thought he wasn't doing enough, right? But
Mhm.
I didn't understand. For men, it's a lot harder to accept and to deal with. And I remember one time, Holly, talked about it, Rodney
Mhm.
was hard. It's hard for men to
Yes.
accept that their child is not going to be the child that they thought they were going to raise, not going to throw that football. You talk
Mhm.
about Rodney Peete, who's a quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, and now being told your firstborn son, may not throw a ball, right? And then I'm watching my husband go through it. It was a lot, and it did take an emotional toll on our marriage, right? We did separate for a time. Um, and it does. I mean, sometimes this thing called autism can and does affect a marriage, right? Because some of the things that we see our children going through, especially as women, um,
Yes.
we step up, right? When we need to. Sometimes men, it's a little harder for them to accept and deal with. And I saw that, with my husband. And in that moment, I realized he was hurting too, right? I jumped into action. He kept his silence. But
Mm.
when I tell you, that this man is truly an amazing dad to our special needs son, to all our children.
Mm.
But to see the love that these two have for one another, even through, I know he's hurting in his own way because his son will never throw that football. He'll never be on a football field the way that he thought he could have been. Um, but the love that he has for him is definitely unconditional. I wish I would have seen more fathers do what he does. You know, Yeah, it took a toll, and I'm sure he has his moments as well.
Mhm.
Um, but the love that he has for his son, I tell people all the time, if it was a choice that Naysan had to save one of us that's gonna jump off the cliff, he had to save one, I'm gonna go down. He gonna save his daddy. Uh, I'll own that because he is definitely not a mama's boy. He's a definitely a daddy's boy. But I appreciate um Hassan for being the best possible father he can for Nasan and dealing with the things that I think he never thought he had to deal with. And even now, with Nasan being this 21-year-old man and who's
Mhm.
not sleeping through the night, this man will get up at 4:30 in the morning because Nasan wants to go for a ride when he wants to go for a ride and take him out. Right? This
Mhm.
man has a routine with his son. Like the love that these two have is undeniable, and I will forever be grateful to my husband for for what he's doing with and for Nasan. Um, but yeah, the family dynamics is real. You know, Nasan is now at a point where he's having seizures. He's had very aggressive behavior. Nasan requires 24/7 care. He can never be left alone on his own for even a second because he will destroy, or he could have a seizure, or it's a lot going on. And my daughters, I go back to them. These ladies are amazing. Dominique, which is my oldest, moved back from Georgia, and she's been a great big help. You know, they're now seeing things that I didn't tell them about. Mom, how come you didn't tell me you were going through this with Naysan? Or why didn't you tell us about the behaviors? But between Dominique,
Mhm.
and they were all living in 3 different states, right?
Yeah.
One was in Georgia, one was in LA, and the other one is in Maryland. And they make sure I'm okay now. They understand, they see better. You know, I couldn't ask for 3 more beautiful angels from God, my gifts, my blessings. These women are amazing. One thing I worried about, if anything ever happened to me, what would happen to Nasan, right? I don't worry anymore because I know he
Mhm.
has 3 amazing sisters that got him and they will be there for him. Naya, I gotta say, she surprised me a few years ago. She worked for Netflix. She worked on an animated series called
I
Ada
was just
Twist.
about to ask you to share about that. Go ahead.
She worked on this animated series called Ada Twist the Scientist. Was based on a series of books about a little African American girl who was a
Mhm.
scientist and her friends, Rosie and Ziggy. Um, It was co-produced by Chris Nee, who is the creator of Doc McStuffin, and Higher Ground Production, which is Michelle, my forever president, Barack Obama, and First Lady Michelle Obama production company. Naya was tasked to write 4 episodes for this series because she was a production assistant or manager on this show. And she surprised me
Mhm.
with an episode that she wrote entitled A Will with a Twist. And
Mhm.
it was the introduction of Ada's cousin, Naysan, who was on the autism spectrum, and his mom, Nadine. Wow.
What was that like for you to see your life being reflected in this cartoon and being penned by your daughter?
Wow. Excuse me.
Mhm.
Overwhelming. I've been getting so many surprises, but this was the first of many to come. The day she told me about it, I'm looking at her like, "Huh, what? Mom, I wrote a character by the name of Naysan into this episode who is nonverbal, which you really
Mm.
didn't see, who was
Right.
also African American, which you rarely saw. For her to depict us, right? Her brother, who inspired this episode, on this show that's going to be seen not only all over the country, but all over the world, because that's where Netflix is. And to educate even a preschooler about autism was amazing. And what I loved about what Netflix did, they were genuine. They hired a nonverbal actor
Mhm.
to voice Nasan's sounds and actions. Nasan had these actions because he doesn't speak. And this gentleman the young man who did this also uses an augmentative device, an ACC device, and they implemented that into this episode. And what I think this episode did, it made it okay, number one, to see someone of color, because a lot of times you don't see a lot of black and brown children with autism or even depicted on television, right? And
Mhm.
showing how important it is to explain it to people, especially to children, because children are so, what do I want to say? They know that something's different about a child, and
Mhm.
sometimes, especially in the school systems, they weren't sharing, what autism was, and they would put some of these kids in classrooms, right?
Yes.
And I remember being in a substitute I was subbing one day, and this little boy was doing this. And this is something we call stimming. His name was AJ. I'll never forget it. And the little boy next to me said, "Oh, he's retarded."
Mhm.
And I looked at the little boy and I said, "No, he's not retarded. He has something called autism." I said, "Do you know what autism is?" And the little boy looked at me and said, "No." So I think it's so important to educate, because in that moment, I educated this child on what autism was. And he
Mhm.
was receptive to it because he said, "Oh, I didn't know that." Right. So we just assume. So this episode showed that children can understand it if you break it down. She used like a metaphor of a rainbow, right?
Mhm.
Of different colors and shapes, right? And that's what autism is. There's no one size fit all for our children. But having her do this episode and including Naysan and Auntie Nadine, and what I loved about in that episode, she talked about the importance of taking care of me. And I think Ada's mom was watching Naysan that day so that I can go
Mhm.
get me a mommy day, right? Some
Mhm.
stress-free time. And that's something that I talk often about, that
Yeah.
parents need to have me time, right? De-stress time, because it is overwhelming taking care of a child on the spectrum. All of our
Yes.
children are not a one size fit all. We don't have the perfect world of a good doctor, right? We see some of these episodes and you get this vision of what autism is, and sometimes it's not depicted that way. So to have
Mhm.
shows like Ada Twist talk about autism and showing black and brown, and even the show with the Proud Family. I believe
Mhm.
Holly Robinson Pete was also in that as well. Talk about autism and the reality of it for us in black and brown, and to now target a children's audience is so important. Representation means so much. So I'm grateful to my daughter for using that platform to do that and to share it. And I hope that people understand that we're not one bubble, right? We need to see all facets of autism. And I love now when I go on social media that I see people talking about it more, and they're sharing their stories and they're sharing their journey. And they're not showing that it's a good doctor, right? Or a Rain
Mhm.
Man, right? Or even the accountant where, Ben Affleck plays in it. Those are all high functioning individuals. What about the ones who aren't high functioning? What about the families who are dealing with severe autism? Like I am. I'm dealing with severe autism with my son. I'm dealing with epilepsy for my son. I'm dealing with challenging behaviors. There's so many of us out here. And I just want people to know that you're not alone in this journey called autism. There's so many things that can be done. I will tell people I'm blessed to be in the state of New Jersey. I think they offer one of the best support systems for children and
Mhm.
families living with this diagnosis to them. I applaud everyone who continues to support the work that we do and making sure that these children get supports and services with their own communities, from the fact that we do after school
Yes.
programs, we do summer camps, we do overnight respite, we do a weekend respite. I remember in the midst of COVID, everything shut down and no one was doing anything for our kids. They opened up the camps, but no one was taking children with autism. And I
Mhm.
remember jumping into action, and we hosted a summer camp in the midst of COVID in the
Mhm.
parking lot of a church, St. Matthew's AME Church in Orange, because our children deserve to get the same types of supports that any other child can get. And through Nassan's Place, that's what we do. We advocate, we implement, and we make sure if we can't provide the services, we let them know where they can go and we help them navigate it. We don't just say here and go on and you're on your own, right? The things
Right.
that we've been able to offer through Nassan's Place, because of the generous support, And let me make it clear, we cannot do what we do without the support of the sponsors, the donors, the grants that we receive, the volunteers who help us, the staff. And I wanted people to know too, Tanya,
Mhm.
that we're grassroots organizations. We're on the ground. We're doing the work. We're often the ones who are overlooked. We're often the ones who don't get those grants that come out. We're the ones who have to scrape and scrape to get what we can get to help these families. But we're the ones on the ground. You know, a lot of these national organizations, they get the funding, but it doesn't trickle back down to grassroots organizations like Nassan's Place. We're in this community. We're doing the work. And I think it's so important. And I tell people all the time, the doors are always open for you to walk through anything that we do, because I want you to see what your donation is doing, what you're sponsorshipping, the lives that you're impacting. I want you to open the doors and come and see what we do. But we struggle every day to get funding. Like, you know, this year we were going to have no funding. And out of the blue, God sent an angel our way, and we were able to get this grant through the Maddie Fund, through Dr. Alfie. And I will be forever grateful, because she saved us this year. Like, we were struggling trying to get funding. For every grant that we applied for, it was always a no. It's always a
Mhm.
no, right? And then
Mhm.
this angel was sent to us out of nowhere, and we got this grant that's now helping us to sustain. But we still need more help. We need more support. People need to know that these grassroots organizations are out here doing the work. We don't
Right.
get the funding, right? We don't get what we need so that we could help these families. These largest organizations does, but they don't, a lot of times don't trickle it down to the grassroots people who are doing the work.
And you know, Nadine, when we were talking before, you were talking about, in terms of it, your grassroots work. Who all comprises your team? Can you share with the listeners who all is the team that is Nassan's Place?
For-
So they really understand when you say grassroots, you really mean grassroots.
I will say this, for the first 7, maybe 8 years, I was it. I was a one woman machine in terms of operational. Of course, I cannot do this by myself in terms of the programming. We hire staff, the volunteers are there. You know, I have a board that's also there. But to actually do the work, we didn't have money to really pay salaries. And here's the reality, especially in urban inner cities, you're not going to get a lot of volunteers. So a lot of the work was on me for the first 7 to 8 years. And then God sent in this angel who used to volunteer with us by the name of Carla Gomez. And Carla's been with us now for almost 5, 6 years. She used to volunteer. She came back after college. She's been one of my saving grace.
Mhm.
And then, you know, when it comes from an operational perspective, it's myself as the executive director. I wear many hats. It's
Mhm.
Carla as my administrative assistant, my executive administrative assistant. And then we have Naya, who just came aboard, my daughter, who just came aboard about a year ago, because we continue to grow, right? So we need more help and support. But between the three of us operationally, we do it all, from the social media to the grant writing to the day
Mhm.
to day of making sure things are in place, making sure we do this, the A, the B, you know, it's a lot of work. So you have three people essentially doing probably about 12 different jobs, right? And then we have our staff, right? Because we can't do the programming by ourselves. So we have staff that we hire who are comprised of special ed teachers, general ed teachers,
Mhm.
um, teachers assistants, paras, and we even hire parents who are looking to supplement their income. Some parents can't work for whatever reason, and we hire them, just like we hire individuals on the spectrum for our after school programs, our summer camps. You know, so we have a support staff there when we need them for our programming, but the nuts and bolts of this organization is driven by three people: myself as the executive director, Carla as the administrative executive assistant, and Naya, who does a lot of our grant writing, our promotional piece, and all of the above. But the day to day is three of us right now doing this work. Um, More is needed, and as we continue to grow
Mhm.
and get the funding, because that's so important, you know, to pay for people's services. It's a cost to that, right? You know, we want to be able to get more grants, right? But we can't afford sometimes to pay for a grant writer, right? And we've
Mhm.
learned to do those things on our own. And a lot of times it has not been successful as us getting grants, but we continue to do what we need to do. And we have been going strong now, 13 years. We're getting ready to go into 14 years. But, once Nassan's place open up our center, we will have it will be fully staffed because
Mhm.
we will have so many different components to that even myself, Naya, and Carla can't do on our own. But I will tell you, we need funding to be able to hire the people, and we want to hire quality people. I tell people all the time, I will not take in 20 kids and hire a staff that is not professionally equivalent to deal with them. I will take 10 over 20 so that I
Mm.
can hire the right professionals to come in and work with our children. I will take quality over quantity any day. I will never
Mhm.
put our children in a position that they're not with trained professionals. Right. And,
Mm.
just like with anything else, it's a hit or miss. But I'm grateful that we've been able to get some amazing people to work with us through this journey, and we will continue to seek out individuals who love doing the work. And you have to have a special heart in order to work with our children, because let me tell you, these,
Mhm.
and I've seen it firsthand because I've been a victim to it as well.
Mhm.
They will hit, they will kick, they will bite, they will spit, right? Behaviors can be very challenging. They can charge at you. It takes a special heart. It takes a special person to deal with this day to day because they don't have to. And,
Right.
you have to compensate them for it. One of the things that's important to me is the ratio. For example, on an atypical camp, I think the state said you can have for every 15 kids, you can have one person. For us with 15 kids on the autism spectrum, we may need 8,
Mhm.
right? A 2 to 1, a 1 to 1, and some 3 to 1s. And that's where the cost is heavy for us. I remember being told by one of our previous donors that our salaries were too high and therefore they couldn't give us any more funding because of the salaries. But I tell people, you got to look at what we do and who we
Mhm.
hire for, right? Because not only do we hire, staff to come in and work with these children, we also hire OT, we bring in ABA, we bring in
Mhm.
speech. All of that's a cost, whereas atypical programs don't have that additional cost. So if we have 15 kids and the state says you can pay one person, but we know the challenges that some of our kids have, we may have to pay, like I said, 8.
Right.
That's a huge discrepancy, right? So where do you think this funding's coming from? How do you think we pay the quality of staff? Because I will never put 15 children with one person
Mhm.
that's on the spectrum. It can't happen, right?
Right.
I will take maybe 3 and have one, right? To make sure that that child is getting a quality program. But I just want people who is hearing this or listening to this, please know that we're an organization that is on the ground, that we recognize the importance of all of our children getting the supports that they need. But for our children, it does cost a little more to get the services for them, to get them
Right.
the quality of services that they need. So help is always needed and appreciated. And I just got to say thank you to all of our community partners who continue to support us, and our volunteers who come out. You know, um, we do need those volunteers, and they're so important. And a lot of times people don't talk about the volunteers, but a lot of what we do, we couldn't do without them. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who continues to help and support us. I mean, we've met some amazing people along the way, in terms of support. You know, as we go into this new year, you mentioned earlier that I am the 2025 Inspire
Mhm.
Change Maker for the New York Giants. I got to say thank you to the New York Giants for their continued support. They've been supporting us for over 7 years. But this year was a different year for us. It was an opportunity for us to work very closely with one of the New York Giants players' family. And I just have to say thank you to Angela Burns, who is Brian Burns' mom and Stanley McCover's mom. And her son, Brian Burns, is now a Pro Bowler. He will be going to the Pro Bowl. And she has two amazing sons. And, a lot of people may or may not know that Stanley is a former NFL player as well, and who actually has a son on the autism spectrum. And when they came to New York to with Brian, one of the things they wanted to do was connect with an organization that was making a difference in communities. They could have chosen any other community. I mean, we're a grassroots nonprofit. A lot of times we're overlooked. Most of the time, especially when you have these athletes, they go for the national organizations. But this family took to a grassroots organization and has been working with us help our families, as well as get their organization, the Brian Burns Family Charities, out there. And I am
Mhm.
just truly grateful to the family for partnering with a grassroots organization that is making a difference and an impact in underserved inner city communities. Um, as I said earlier, they could have went to any national organization, but they chose to do grassroots, and that is so important. And I am looking forward to seeing the amazing things they're going to be doing through their charity, the Brian Burns Charity. Under
Mhm.
that charity is Hype for Life Foundation, a champion for autism. You got to check them out. They have a campaign, I am a champion for autism.
Mhm.
And Nassan's Place is so honored and privileged to be a part of their journey and to help and assist them any way that we can as they navigate their nonprofit and getting the word out and using their national platform to do that.
Nadine, you have shared with us such an incredible journey in terms of the work you do, the partnerships that you're involved in, the the intimate work that is done through just the three of you being like Nassan's place, along with the staff that you also hire and volunteers that you bring on also. That I wanna in coming to the close of our conversation now kind of focus like on you and how you manage and take care of yourself in this process as well. So one of my questions is that being relentless is a compliment people can give you, but relentless people are often tired. And so what is the personal cost of being a change maker?
Sleep, no. ah, well, let me say this, Tanya. Nassan's Place has been therapy for me because it is a lot. I'm overwhelmed, right? Dealing with my own challenges and accepting what I cannot change within my own son, but being able to help others, being able to see that, you know, children on the spectrum are all not like Nissan, right? I I pray one day that I will hear my son's voice. I have never heard him speak, right? But I know that one day, I know that he does speak. He just doesn't use verbal, right? But
Mhm.
you know, for me, it has been overwhelming. There's days where I have shut down mentally, right? But everyone looks at me as this strong woman, like, oh, you seem to have it all and you seem under control. But I'm not. There's days where I get on my hands and my knees and I pray and I ask God to give me guidance. There's days where I said, God, I've had enough. Please, I can't do this anymore. And he said, yes, you will. And then I get
Mhm.
so burnt out because the same people that I'm helping, and I had to learn to understand that everyone's not like me. They're not like how my mother was, right?
Mhm.
I've seen people who wanted me to fail, right? Which is sad because here's the
Mhm.
thing. If I fail, each and every family that we support, we fail, right? So it's not about me. And sometimes I look at where I'm at and how far I've gotten. People don't know what I've been through to get to this point. They see all this, me at certain events and out, but they don't know my story, right?
Mhm.
They don't know the countless phone calls I'm on in the middle of the night with some of these families. They don't know that sometimes I'll go out in the middle of the night to help a family. Like I had one family call me and say they're at Penn Station because they were homeless. They got locked out and they called me at night because they had nowhere to go. They don't know that I will go out and get out of my bed and those sacrifices are made. They don't know that there's families out here that don't have food and I'll go out to get a ShopRite gift card. Or they don't know that there's families who family member they were staying with told them they had to leave in the middle of the night and they had nowhere to go. Right? They don't know the extent of what we do. People have this illusion sometimes of what life looks like for some of us, but they don't know the real grits, the real less glamorous part of it all, right?
Mhm.
Um, I'm on the phone constantly with parents, trying to talk them down, trying to help them with their mental stability because it's overwhelming, even for me. That's why mental wellness is so important. Self-care is
Mhm.
so important because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of anyone else. And I'm learning to
Mhm.
take my own advice because there's days where I just keep going and going and going. And one of the things I can say, it has strained my relationship in certain times with my children and with my husband because they'll say, well, mom, give us some time, or, you're always out there doing it. But I don't think they understand in the midst of what I'm dealing with, it helps me mentally because I can't know that there's a family out there going through it and I'm not doing anything to help. Right? And I know I can't help them all, but
Mhm.
if I could, I would. Um,
Mhm.
but for me, it has been therapy to help these families. But now I realize I have to take a balance and I have to take care of myself.
Mhm.
Because if I don't, then I can't help them, just like they can't help their children. So I'm learning, to do better, right? For me, because it is a lot, when those doors are closed at night. I'm not the only family going through it. Our lives are different, right?
Right.
People don't know that Naysan will be up all night long, right? And that I
Mhm.
can't sleep because I can't leave him up, right? They don't know. Like, I think I got bags under my eyes now that,
Yeah.
he needs 24/7 care. Most people do who know me. They know what I'm dealing with. They know I'm dealing with seizures. Like, he had 63 seizures this year, right? People don't know that. I'm starting to record some of the behaviors, like even at his school, they have to do a lockdown when he goes through it. Shout out to the Phoenix Center. They're an amazing school that's holding it down, for our children. And some of them can be volatile and
Mhm.
dangerously aggressive. So, mentally, it's hard as a mother when you have to deal and hear those things. But for me, I'm learning that I have to take some time for myself. I tell people all the time, I'll be 60 in 6 months, right? And my goal is to walk away from the day to day operation at 65. Not to leave Nassan's place, but to turn it over to hopefully one of my daughters to
Mhm.
run the day to day. Because I have given a lot of me to this organization and I will continue to be a part of it. But I also know that I have to take care of me in order to be able to continue to take care of everyone else.
Mm. And I want to follow up on that, where I have another question for you about how you take care of yourself. So, when a mission is born out of a personal family need, the boundaries like between work and life can blur. Not even just blur, but even like just disappear. So how do you reclaim Nadine at the end of the day? Is there a particular hobby, ritual, or even silence that has absolutely nothing to do with Nassan's place where you can just be Nadine?
Hmm. I don't think I've been Nadine in a long time. No,
Hmm.
I think the old Nadine left a long time ago. The new Nadine is trying to figure things still out, right? I'm still coping. I'm still dealing with, juggling my marriage, juggling my children,
Hmm.
juggling Nassan's place, and trying to have a balance in between it all, and still find me because I did lose a part of me, right? I'm not the same Nadine I was 20 years ago, right? I'm totally different because I thought my life would be different, Like I said earlier, 6 months I'm going to be 60, right? My kids should be grown and out the house and I'm living my best life, right? Traveling
Hmm.
the world and doing all these great things. But, God had a different purpose for me. And I'm still trying to figure it out. I do know that every day is a new day. Every day is a different day. Every day gets better, and then there's some days that it goes back to being worse. And I navigate it. My faith in God, I think, continues to hold me together. Because there's days where I do feel like I'm going to break, and God doesn't allow me to do that. And as long as I continue to hold on to my faith, I think I'm going to be okay. And one of the things that I say often, and it's so important. Let no weapon formed against me prosper. Because
Amen.
if that weapon prospers, then our children lose out. And
Mm.
what's so disheartening for me And sometimes it does bother me when the very people that I'm trying to help and support are the ones who are trying to kind of come at me, right? Why can't we come together and work together? People don't realize that this work is not easy. I make it look easy, but it's not easy. You see, Tanya, all the things that we do, right? I'm always coming up with these bright ideas. If someone's doing something, I want our kids to do it too. And people know me by now. If I
Mhm.
see something, I'm going to jump into action. And it's important that balance comes in for me on a mental level. And that's why I'm excited to share. And I think I've shared it with you as well and the world, to
Mhm.
save the dates. On March 13th through March 15th, we will be holding, Naysan's Place will be holding a wellness, self-care, a mental wellness, self-care, autism mom caregiver retreat for the whole weekend. It's an opportunity for all of us, including myself, to connect with others, to talk about what we're dealing with. How do we deal with some of the challenges that we deal with as we raise our children, right? I need
Mhm.
to learn as well. We're going to have panel discussions that weekend. We're going to have
Mhm.
autism moms hosting most of the workshops. I truly believe in order for us to learn from one another, I have to have us in the room, right? I
Mm.
know we have a lot of professionals out there who have studied this, right? But who actually don't live it, right? They don't live it. So and I appreciate them for opening up their hearts to do it. But most of the workshops that will be provided will be hosted by us, autism moms. We'll talk about our stories, we'll
Mhm.
talk about our journeys, we'll talk about how we navigate all of this and how we still try to keep our mental state together, right?
Yes.
How important it is for us to take care of us so that we can take care of ourselves. So this weekend is going to be transforming. We got 3
Mhm.
months to go. It
Mhm.
is going to be a a weekend of sisterhood, right?
Mm.
Connecting,
Mm.
l- learning, right? Navigating. We're going to have giveaways. We're going to have some fun. We're going to do some Zumba. We're going to have a dinner. We're going to have dancing. We are going to bond in a way that I think is going to help us when we leave that weekend to better live our lives and find out how do we do it, because there's a lot of things that a lot of parents don't know that are out there in terms of resources that can help them with their mental state, right? Because one of the things a lot of our families are dealing with is food insecurities. So if you run out of money because you don't have enough, and remember, a lot of our kids don't eat just atypical food. You got to go out and it costs a lot of money. But there's programs out here that you may be able to get additional funding for that can help you. We're going to share all of that information. And in the
Mhm.
midst of all of that, we're going to have some fun. We're going to do some pampering. We're going to make sure when you leave there, you are rested, you are rejuvenated. We're going to have some facials, some massages, maybe a little bit of mimosas, something to drink. We need some. It's going to be a fun-filled weekend.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the things I want to say is that I recognize that some of our autism moms can't get a babysitter to come for the whole weekend. So one of the things that we're doing is that on that Saturday, because that Saturday is where all of the workshops and the pamper me and all of that's going to happen, we will provide childcare that day for those parents so that they can attend the workshops, the panel discussions, the luncheon, and all of that. We will provide childcare. And the cost for this event is so minimum. So
Yeah.
minimum. That's why it's important for us to continue to get sponsors and donors. But it's also important for us to make sure that we check in on our autism caregivers and our moms. It is so important. And I think for me, this weekend is going to be so therapeutic. My children have already said to me, Mom, you're not working this event. And I
You're
won't. I
enjoy
have
it.
Carla in charge and I have Naya in charge and a couple other people, and they're going to handle it. And I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to release, relax, and I'm going to be very candid because I am going to be hosting one of the workshops as well. And to the point where you said about my mental, being and how I navigate through all of what I'm dealing with and still show up for everybody else. I'm going to talk about that in more detail at the workshop. So hope to see you all there. And I'm excited, Tanya, because you're going to be one of our facilitators for the workshop. So I'm looking forward to you sharing your wealth of knowledge. And thank you for this opportunity. And I know we didn't cover everything because I kept talking all this time, but I
That is
appreciate you and I
okay.
thank you.
Nadine, I'm just glad you carved out this time to walk us through your journey, your trials, your tribulations, your triumphs. And in my last question to you, and then I want you to share the story about the Jennifer Hudson show. Um, and also with the Giants, because those two surprise stories I think are so important for people to know. I'm curious about your joy. Beyond the awards and the breakthroughs for other families, which are incredible, what is the one source of joy that belongs only to you? The thing that reminds you that you are a person and not just the founder of a grassroots organization.
My children are my biggest joy. All four of them. They are what keeps me moving. They are what keeps me going. They are my biggest joy, to know that I have these four amazing children
Mhm,
in their own right, doing things out there in this world. I think God said, you know what? I'm going to give you these three amazing daughters because you're going to need a lot of help when I give you this son who is going to
mhm,
allow you to live in your purpose on why you're here on earth. And I do believe
mhm,
that. Um, Having my family is so important to me. Um, my children know that I've sacrificed a lot of time without them, right? Because I'm
mhm,
out here. And even though they get annoyed sometimes, well, mom, you do this for everybody else, da, 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 da.
mhm, mhm,
They know why I do what I do and they're okay with it. So if I had to say what my biggest joy is, it's my children. It's them. If I had to say my biggest joy in running Nassan's place, because my children are my biggest joy in life. In running Nassan's place, it's the children and the families that I've met along this way,
mhm,
right? There's certain things that have been life changing for me. One of the things that I said when I started Nassan's place is that I wanted to meet others, right? Because I know it wasn't a one size fit all. And all
mhm,
of these amazing children that I've met along the way, that's what gives me joy when it comes to Nassan's place. You know, all the glitz and glamour of going to events and hanging out with, celebrities here and there,
mhm,
is great, right? But the biggest joy that I have is being in the room with our kids, being at
mhm,
one of Nassan's place functions, whether it's our after school program, the summer camp, holiday celebration, anything that's family oriented with our children brings me the biggest joy. To see the
mhm,
faces of these kids, right? To know that they can come out and be a part of a community. And I sit back sometimes and I'm in awe of what God allowed to happen. All of the connections now. Our kids, some of them didn't even have play dates, right? Some of them
mhm,
didn't have parties, and now they do. And all of it's all because of Nassan's place, the connections that we were able to make, the village that we were able to create, the family, because family
mhm,
doesn't mean you're bonded by blood, it means you're bonded by heart. And to see the relationships that have come out of the connection to Nassan's place, it brings me joy. It truly does. And when I think of some of our amazing kids, all I could do is smile.
mhm. Nadine, what a wonderful, wonderful testimony to the work that you do and the people that you support and your mindfulness of always, in as much as it's hard and it's challenging, that you are still like, I'm here for it all and more. Um, I just want to close if it's okay to ask you to share um two joyful moments that you had shared before we started our interview, which was how you got to be on the Jennifer Hudson show and how you got to be recognized as an inspired change maker by the New York Giants. Please share those stories.
Well, what happened was, oh God, what happened was for the Jennifer Hudson show, my daughter did tell me she wrote in. We had visited the Jennifer Hudson show back in October when I was out for the Hollywood Foundation annual gala. While we were there, we visited the show, and while we were there was a mother-daughter there. And the daughter had wrote in about her mom's work, I think working in the prison system with reform.
Mhm.
And my daughter was like, wow, Mom, you do some amazing things too. I should write in about you. I was like, okay,
Mhm.
whatever. Didn't think anything of it. And then Naya calls me, Mom, I wrote into the Jennifer Hudson show. I said, okay. And they want to meet with us. I said, oh, okay. So we did a Zoom call on a Tuesday. They heard more about our story because I'm assuming Naya sent them information about us. And they said, it was towards the end of the season and that they were pretty much maxed out of the programs that they were going to do. But they would get back to us. So that Friday, we got a call. Well, Naya got the call. She didn't tell me a lot of what was happening, but she said, "Well, Mom, they want you to come out to the show. However, they would like for you to be an audience guest. Uh, Jennifer is pretty much booked for the rest of the season, but they do want to put you on their YouTube channel and talk about your story because they have this new platform where they're letting people share their inspirational stories." So I was like, oh, okay. So I flew
Mhm.
out on Sunday. Naya and I went to the studio on that Monday. The producers came out. They, told me they had a couple of questions for me. They wanted to make sure that I understood that right after the show, they would have one of their producers bring a camera and I'll go over to the side. They'll ask me these questions about the organization and work we do. And that would be
Mhm.
that. So I said, okay. I said, well, do you think it's possible for me to get a picture with Jennifer that day? She's one of my favorites. I've been watching her since American Idol. I love her. And they were like, oh, well, Jennifer's really booked up. Unfortunately, it wouldn't happen at this time, but maybe if you come back another time, we can get that done. So I'm like, no, okay, no big deal. At least we'll get our story told. And that was important for me to be able to get the honor and the privilege to be able to share our story on a platform that has J HUD in it. That was good enough for me. And I
Mhm.
was at the happy place. So cool.
Mhm.
So, while we're sitting in the audience, my daughter says to me, I had put my glasses on because I'm trying to see when Jennifer comes out. And my daughter said, "Was Mom, take your glasses off?" I was like, "No, I'm not taking my glasses off. I need to see Jennifer." And she said, "Mom, the cameras are all around." I said, "I know, but I need to see the show." So long
Mhm.
story short, I see this camera come over by me. Didn't think anything of it, but I was like, "Okay, if I'm going to get a glimpse of being on television, I don't want them to see me with my glasses on." So
Mhm.
next thing I know, Jennifer comes out. I'm squinting to try to see it because my daughter made me take my glasses off, and she's talking about the agenda, which was her son surprising her with a song, which was a beautiful segment.
Mhm.
To hear her love and how proud she was of her son was amazing. And then, right after that segment, she goes, and we have two amazing women in the audience that has such an inspirational story. And she goes, Nadine and Naya, come on down. I'm stunned. I'm like truly
Mhm.
stunned because remember, I was already prepared to just speak off camera and not to see her or even sit on the sofa. I
Mhm.
was stunned to say the least. If you saw the episode, you see me speechless for the very first time. My daughter did an amazing job, and then I did
That
come
was
back.
hilarious.
So it was such an honor and a privilege to meet Jennifer. And yeah, they got me good. That was a surprise that I did not see coming, but a pleasant surprise. And that was not the only surprise I got within the last 30
Mhm.
days. The other one was when they called me to have lunch with Brian Burns, the New York Giants player, who we are now community partners with, to come to the Giants headquarters, unbeknownst to me that they were going to make the announcement that I was the 2025 Inspire Change Maker for the New York Giants. And basically, that award goes to a nonprofit or an individual in the 32 markets of the NFL. Um,
Mhm.
each team gets to pick someone in that community that's making an impact and a
Mhm.
difference within their communities. And I was selected by the New York Giants. And it was announced to me by Brian Burns and his mom, along with my family and Ethan from the New York Giants. And to say the least, I was overwhelmed and surprised because not only was I told that I was getting this distinguished honor, but that I was also going to be going to the Super Bowl in February. So to say the least, I was just over the moon. And to find out, it also came with a $10,000 donation to our organization. and an opportunity for me to be at one of the upcoming games and for them to honor me on the field. That was truly something that I never saw coming. I'm greatly appreciative for the opportunity that we were now able to be seen on a national platform. I truly appreciate the New York Giants, Ethan Medley, Brian Burns, his amazing family, his mom Angela, and brother Stanley, for partnering with us and making sure that children, especially those in underserved inner city communities, are that are often not seen, are going to be seen, and for using their platform to spread awareness throughout our country is so amazing. So truly grateful, and I'm looking forward to attending the Super Bowl.
Oh, Nadine, I just thank you so much for the time you've taken out of your very busy professional and personal life to like come and chat and just to share. And you're an amazing woman, and it's just really a life story that I hope our listeners really appreciate, because you do a lot and have made such an impact to make this world a better place. Where can people find you, Nadine?
They can find us. Hi, they can find us at www.nasansplace.org, or they can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. You know, one thing I tell people all the time, Tanya,
Mhm,
is that
mhm.
Nassan's Place can't stop the diagnosis, but we can help the families affected by it. So if you need help or even just to have a conversation, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to us via email at info.nasansplace@gmail.com, or call us at 973-424-7781. And we will definitely return your call or answer your email as quickly as we can. But thank you, Tanya, for this opportunity. One autism mom to another, I appreciate you for your platform and for sharing your stories and your journeys and giving autism moms like myself an opportunity to talk about what we do and how we're living and how we're doing. And thank you. And how are you doing? I want to ask that question.
I'm hanging in there, like on our end. Maceo just well, he's 12, he'll be turning 13 in February. Um, and he has just accomplished so much. Um, and I'm just very grateful to see how he's evolving. He's talking more. Um, those synapses are firing because he is so witty, he's cunning, he's loving. We have the fortune now of having therapy sessions back again now here at home, and he's partnered with a phenomenal young aide who is just pushing the envelope in terms of pushing his reading skills, his fluency, his ability to interact and socialize. um we do everything from baking sourdough bread from scratch to playing Uno and taking walks, and it's just that seeing him come into being a teenager and just it's wonderful. I'm really glad to be his mom. I really am. And even with all the challenges, the ups and downs, between school and different agencies and lack of services, etc. um, he's arriving at a place that I feel more comfortable, and I feel better, and I feel he's going to be okay. And that has not always been the feeling, as you know. Um, but he's doing good, and I'm doing good too. And just thank you. Thank you for asking. I think, many of the things that I was sharing before we started our on the air conversation, how I've evolved to be the mom and advocate that I am is in many respects because of you. And seeing what you do and how you do and the risk you take and the heartbreak that comes with it, but the joy that also comes as well, um, has enabled and also empowered me to be the mom and advocate that I'm growing to be. So I just want to say just thank you. Thank you for being you, Nadine, because you really You really are a change maker. You really are.
Oh,
You
well,
are.
thank you. But listen, on this journey that we're on, it's
Yes.
a lot for all of us. And, like I said, I want to be so much more transparent because I think people have me on this like pedestal. I don't want to be there. I'm like, no, I'm just like you, right? I'm just like
Yeah.
you, but I get it. I get it. Cause I got to tell you, the first time I met Holly Robinson Pete, I was just like, oh my God, it's Holly. But then
Mhm.
when I sat down with Holly, and I'll never forget, we were in her living room having a glass of wine, and it was just two autism moms talking.
Just
No,
talking.
just talking. Like, she was really down to earth. She was a mom, right? Not who we saw and hanging with the Mr. Cooper and
Mhm, mhm.
21. It was just humbling. And once I got through all of that, because I'm still in awe of her, but more importantly, I'm grateful to her because she made it okay, for us to talk about it because we really didn't
Yes.
see us out there. I appreciate now you see more Tisha Campbell coming
Mhm,
out, you see Faith Evans coming out, and I appreciate these ladies for using their platforms, right? To share more awareness, to talk about it more, because if more of us see it, then that stigma would kind of loosen a little and we'll bring our kids out into the community. Because a lot of times there's still so many kids in the community that don't come out because of that
mhm.
stigma. The parents are embarrassed or whatever the case may be. And I just think, if I could use my platform in any way to make people know that it's okay to come out. One of the biggest things for me, Tanya, I would love to go into other communities, not to franchise Nassan's place because I couldn't do that. I wouldn't want to do that. I don't have enough time in the day. But I would love to find another Nadine and give them the blueprint that I did,
Mhm.
how I got to where I got. Because I often get asked, how did you do this? Like, how do it's about getting out into your community. It's about knowing where you should be in places. A lot of people tell me, "Oh, I don't want to be political." Well, I'm not political either. But sometimes
Mhm.
you have to be in the room with the people who can actually help get things
Yeah.
done. I mean, look at what I was able to accomplish through the city of Newark, through the city of East Orange, right?
Yes.
We were a big influence on one of the churches here in the community opening up a sensory room. So, your impact sometimes doesn't have to be big. It can be small and it can grow, right?
Mm.
Because the
Mhm.
amount of people who have come to me and said, thank you for educating us about autism, opening up our eyes, right? It made a difference. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that through Nassan's place, I was able to educate a community along the way. And if we did more, if we had more people, and there's a lot of Nadines out here, a lot of
Mhm.
don't know how to get started or they don't have the time in the day. A lot of sacrifices are going to have to be made. And I will tell you, I made a lot of sacrifices. And does it impact your life in any way? Of course it did. As I mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, with my children, I neglected with my marriage. I neglected, right? You know, we all have some things that may fall short, but we have to realize what's important to us. And what's
Right.
important to me right now is
Mm.
making sure that my son gets everything that he needs so that he can be the best of who he can be. I've accepted the things that I cannot change. I accepted the fact that he will never throw a football. I've accepted the fact that he will never have a family of his own. I've accepted the fact that he needs 24/7 care. I've accepted those things. But I still go on because he's still doing him, right? He's doing something I never thought he would ever do, is that go to the bathroom. He's able to tell
Mhm.
me he loves me, not by his voice, but by his actions. If I ask him
Yes.
for a kiss, I can get a kiss now. So I'm grateful.
Mhm.
If I ask for a hug, I can get a hug. So I'm I'm okay. I'm not good, but I'm okay.
You're okay. Nadine, thank you again for this
Thank
conversation.
you. I enjoyed this. Like I said, this was therapeutic for me.
Oh my gosh, the feeling is mutual. And to our listeners, just wanted to say thank you again for joining us. I'm Tanya Manning-Yarde, host of Who Needs Shoes. You can find us on Instagram at Who Needs Shoes. You can find us online at whoneedsshoes.com. And again, to my highly esteemed guest and sister, Nadine Wright-Abubakrr, just thank you. And take care, everyone, and we'll see you again soon.